The samurai are some of the best-known warriors in history. Their valor and discipline were unsurpassed, and therefore it's completely natural that audiences are so drawn to tales of their exploits. And, as one would expect, the exploits of these master swordsmen are bloody and messy. Nowhere is this more obvious than an anime that heavily features samurai, to the point that it gets downright horrifying at some points. Therefore, in this marvelous video, we wanted to show you 10 of the most violent and gory samurai anime to ever exist. But before we embark on this bloody journey, please like this video and subscribe to the channel in order to support our work. It might be just a small click for you, but to us, it means an awful lot. Now, grab hold of your katanas and kimonos, here we go. Samurai Shampoo. Samurai Shampoo is a masterpiece. That's it. That's our entire argument. Just kidding, but what we said still stands true, as Samurai Shampoo is undoubtedly one of the most creative and imaginative anime ever made. Shampoo, a creation of Cowboy Bebop creator Shinichiro Watanabe, was the filmmaker's first directorial effort for an anime series since the much-loved Bebop. Shampoo was set in a fictionalized version of the Edo period in Japan, but the show is much more than a rehash of age-old samurai tropes. The show follows two Ronins, Mugen and Jin, who are basically the antithesis of each other. Mugen is a feral wild man with unorthodox sword-fighting skills, while Jin is a highly trained swordsmaster who learned the craft for years in famous schools. However, a strange twist forces these two unlikely companions to accompany Fu, a young barmaid, on her journey to find the samurai who smells of flowers. One of the most memorable aspects of Shampoo is undoubtedly its soundtrack by Nujabes, which grants the world a unique, meditative, lo-fi atmosphere even during the most violent of scenes. It's a miracle that in a show where hordes of enemies are cut down each episode, the chemistry between our lead trio keeps us coming back. Shampoo also features some of the most fluid and gorgeous animation ever seen in anime, which makes the entire experience of watching the show a real sensory treat. Shampoo first aired in 2005 and has since become a hit in both Japan and worldwide. Blade of the Immortal. For our second pick, we're picking the samurai series Blade of the Immortal. Adapted from an adult manga written by Hiroaki Samura, the series has gotten multiple adaptations in the form of series and film. The plot of this extremely bloody saga revolves around Manji, a skilled vagrant samurai who's been cursed with immortality at the hands of an 800-year-old nun, Yabekuni. Frustrated with his own agelessness and grieving over his sister, Manji decides to set out on a quest that will enable him to be rid of his immortality. But Manji's path is filled with about 1,000 evil men, all of whom must be slaughtered for our protagonist to finally be free of the sacred bloodworms that keep him living endlessly. These worms mend almost all wounds, including a literal hole in Manji's brain. On this bloody journey, Manji encounters numerous interesting characters and outcasts, which add to the great emotional depth in this violent show. Owing to the success of the manga, the story was adapted in 2008 by director Koichi Mashimo and B-Train. A much more recent revival occurred in 2019 when Liden Films adapted the manga into a show standing at 24 episodes. This is the version we would recommend if Manji's murderous quest piques your interest. Dororo! In 2019, animation studios MAPPA and Tezuka released a modern adaptation of Dororo, 1969 manga written by the legendary mangaka Osamu Tezuka. Though the story has been adapted before, this version finally does justice to Tezuka's tragic and grotesque saga. Though it has numerous spectacular action scenes and unhinged violence, the beating heart of Dororo's story is in the characters. Dororo's story begins in the Sengoku period, when a feudal lord makes a terrible deal with 12 demonic gods. To ensure the prosperity of his people, the lord pledges his child's organs and limbs to each of the gods. The child is abandoned and left to die, but the infant is found by Jukai, the local doctor who adopts the child and crafts prosthetic limbs to help him. One fateful day, the child, named Hayakumoru, is attacked by demons and manages to defeat the evil entities. Somehow, defeating the demon returns the child's ability to feel pain. It becomes clear that to gain back the rest of his body, Hayakumoru would have to defeat the rest of the 12 demons, and the young man sets out on a journey to achieve his goal. Along the way, this vagrant warrior finds an unlikely ally in a street urchin named Dororo. Dororo has none of the flashy powers or tragic backstories that Hyakumoru does, but the boy is essential to Hyakumoru's journey towards becoming human. While Hyakumoru fights demons to piece back his lost body, he also forms a deep bond with Dororo. Every time Hyakumoru gains a new power, the show almost switches to the body horror genre, as we get grisly depictions of changes occurring inside Hyakumoru's body. Dororo is violent and extremely horrifying, but it's also one of the most sensitive and tragic sagas ever made into anime and will undoubtedly leave you in a puddle of tears by the end. Shigurui! Death Frenzy. Shigurui Death Frenzy was first released in 2007 and is based on the first 32 chapters of Takayuki Yamaguchi's manga of the same name. The show takes place during the 1600s, where Tokugawa Tadanaga was ruling over the Shampoo castle. The main plot of the show revolves around a legendary tournament hosted by Tadanaga in 1629. In this tournament, 21 contestants fought to the death with real weapons. In the midst of the tournament, two strange opponents face each other. One is blind while the other has a cleft foot. But as the show progresses, we learn that these two opponents have a strange, twisted past that has brought them to this point. Shigurui is infamous for its excessive violence and nudity, but it also tells a thrilling story with numerous interesting characters, each with their own motivations. Shigurui is also animated beautifully, with visuals depicting each brutal slash with clarity and vision. The sound also deserves mention, as it brings this strange world to life and makes the violence appear even more immediate. Not many have the stomach for such a bloody spectacle, but that makes it certain that Shigurui deserves a spot on this list. Afro Samurai. Afro Samurai is probably the most unique anime on this list. Not only is the plot about a black samurai, but as a rare creative collaboration between two countries, it also stars Samuel L. Jackson as the voice of its titular character. Based on a seinen manga by Takashi Okazaki, this series has always been considered somewhat avant-garde. Set in a feudal yet futuristic Japan, there's a legend regarding a warrior who wears the #1 headband. Some believe it grants immortality, while others think it grants godlike power to the wearer. There's another headband warrior, #2, who's always on the lookout for #1 in order to challenge the ultimate warrior. We learn that our protagonist, Afro, is the son of a former #1 headband wearer who was killed in combat by a #2 warrior named Justice. The show's main storyline starts many years later, with Afro in possession of the #2 band and looking for vengeance against the man who killed his father. The story takes Afro through many assassins, criminals, and mercenaries, all of whom he slaughters in search of his revenge. The show features music by contemporary musicians like the RZA of the Wu-Tang Clan, giving it a unique vibe that feels anachronistic and visceral. Onimusha. Onimusha is a quintessential piece of samurai fiction and even stars the most famous samurai of all time, Miyamoto Musashi, as its central character. The property is based on the Capcom game of the same name and is essentially a fictionalized retelling of Japanese history with supernatural elements thrown into the mix. Directed by Shinya Sugai with Takashi Miike as the chief director, the TV adaptation follows an aging Musashi through a time when Japan is finally moving towards peace. However, our protagonist is on the hunt for demons lurking in the shadows. Armed with the mythical Oni Gauntlet, the seasoned swordsman embarks on a journey to save the stabilizing nation. This series began streaming on Netflix in 2023, and it's worth watching, especially if you're into Japanese history and folktales. Kurozuka. Speaking of Japanese folktales, there's no other anime that captures their surrealist tone like our next entry, Kurozuka. The show is clearly inspired by a 1938 dance drama of the same name, but draws much of its plotline from the Japanese novel by Baku Yumemokura. The plot of this disturbing affair revolves around Kuro, a swordsman residing in 12th century Japan who falls in love with a mysterious woman on the run from her brother. This woman, named Kuromitsu, turns out to be an immortal vampire, and Kuro ends up imbibing his lover's blood while facing attacks from her pursuers. He's on the verge of transforming into a vampire, but the samurai is beheaded by a shadowy organization called the Red Army, keeping him from becoming truly immortal. Kuro regains consciousness in a post-apocalyptic dystopian Japan with all of his memories missing. Kuro, stranded in this strange time, must now join the revolutionaries to combat the Red Army, which has taken over the entire nation. The show is animated by Madhouse and features some of the bloodiest sword fights ever committed to anime. The show ran for 8 episodes in 2008 and is still considered a milestone in samurai entertainment. Samurai X: Trust and Betrayal. In the aftermath of a massacre of a group of travelers by bandits, the only survivor, a young boy, is taken in by the master swordsman Hiko Seguro. The samurai bestows the name Kenshin on the soldier. Kenshin would study for years, learning the ways of the samurai and becoming a proficient warrior in his own right. However, the boy ends up leaving his master after an argument and sets out to join the revolution against the Tokugawa shogunate. The rest of the show follows Kenshin on this journey as he encounters both friends and foes in this war-torn country. The show is filled with strategy, sword fights, blood, and guts, making it a must-watch for fans of samurai violence. Trust and Betrayal has been praised by critics for its creative use of animation and has since been hailed as one of the masterpieces of the samurai genre. Dramatic, tragic, and beautiful, it provides great instinct into what prolonged violence does to a man's soul. It also tries to study the character of Kenshin to understand why he becomes the way he is. So, if you're looking for a tragic yet bloody treat, this is the show for you. Yasuke. Loosely based on a historical figure by the same name, Yasuke is the story of an African man in 16th century Japan. But this is an alternate reality where magic and technology reign supreme, with Lord Obunaga on the throne. Yasuke goes from being in the service of Jesuit missionaries to becoming a respected warrior in the services of Nobunaga. Gaining notoriety as a skilled samurai, Yasuke fights in numerous battles under Nobunaga until all his forces fall in battle against the demonic warlord Dark General. With the fall of his lord, Yasuke is reduced to Ronin and gives up the sword to work as a rescue boatman in a remote village. But when his peaceful home is attacked by mercenaries, the old black samurai finds himself in a struggle against the Dark General. The show was created by LaShawn Thomas, as the director found himself fascinated by the journey of a stranded African man who had managed to become a respected samurai. The show is an amalgamation of various elements like sci-fi, fantasy, and mecha anime, which makes it very unique for a samurai show. It also satisfies our craving for blood and gore with each violent battle that Yasuke takes place in. The most remarkable part of the show is the performance by Lakeith Stanfield, who brings the titular protagonist to life with his deep baritone. Moyes, Record of Mongol Invasion. Moyes is another show that takes inspiration from real historical events for its plot. The story was first penned by Nanahiko Takagi in his historical manga and was later adapted into an anime by Naz Studios under the direction of Takayuki Kuriyama. The show follows a group of prisoners exiled to Tsushima Island to serve as the first line of defense against the very first Mongol invasion of Japan in 1274. Our central protagonist is Kuchi Jinzaburo, a former samurai retainer who has found himself in the midst of these overwhelming odds. As the Mongolian troops gather on Japan's shores after conquering much of the known world, it's up to this ragtag crew of exiles to defend their nation. The show depicts the brutality of the time with the utmost sincerity and will undoubtedly draw your attention, whether you're a history nerd or not. Kuchi is voiced by Yuki Ono, who portrays the disgraced samurai with perfect authenticity. Moyes is one of those rare shows that entertains and educates at the same time and mixes it all up with healthy doses of ultra-violence. Marvelous verdict! From this list, it's evident that the samurai were a very violent bunch. Thus, it's necessary that the tales depicting these warriors be just as bloody and messy as the warriors themselves. There are multiple scenes in the shows we mentioned above to make your stomach churn, but what else can you expect from swords masters who have committed their entire lives to the craft of cutting people down? But we want to hear your thoughts. Have we missed any samurai shows that you'd want to see on this list? If so, please leave us a comment down below, and we'll do our best to explore it in the future. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel as it helps us bring in more marvelous viewers like yourself. So, sayonara for now, and we'll see you all next time.